All right, hello everyone. We're just gonna wait a couple more minutes for everyone to join and then we'll get started. So if I could just make sure you are all on mute and just sit tight and we'll start soon. So while we're all waiting for more people to join, because we'll start in a couple minutes, what I'm going to get you what to do. So just a few steps to make sure you have the best experience possible is first of all, mute yourselves. And then secondly, you can pin me as the speaker so you don't see everyone else. And then you can also set your view to be side by side. So you just see me and the presentation. So I recommend doing that just to make it easier for you guys as well. But we'll get started in a few more minutes. All right, so it's 11:05 now. I reckon we're gonna get started. Can I just get someone to thumbs up, react if you guys can hear me okay? All right, thanks, Olivia. So yeah, just make sure everyone's muted and you can pin me to be the speaker and have your screen set up side by side so that you can see the presentation and me. But thank you all for coming today. Welcome to our Year 11 Compass series, where we take you through a little talk about stepping into the senior years and hopefully provide you with a little guide for success. So let's kick things off. So today's agenda, what we're going to be doing is firstly, I'm just going to spend a bit of time introducing myself and the center. Then we're going to go into module breakdowns. So I'm going to talk you through Year 11 and Year 12 briefly in terms of what you'll be studying and what you'll see and how this relates to your HSC. Then we're going to have a big bulk talk of essay writing, everyone's favorite thing to do. And then lastly, we're going to have a Q&A session where you guys can send in any questions you might have about senior years or just in general even. So yeah, let's get started. So to introduce myself, my name is Ryan and I'll be your presenter today. I'm an English tutor and a team leader here at OpenWisdom. Just a bit, I guess, more about me. I got band 6s in English Advanced and Extension, and I went to Caringbah High School. And now I'm studying psychology and neuroscience at the University of Sydney. Okay, so just anyone, like just react to anything with any emoji or whatever. Who's nervous about being a senior? Like who's stepped into the senior years and been like, holy crap, like this is so much more work. Like, wow, like it's very different to being in year 10. Yeah, I see someone thumbs up. Anyone else? Or we're all doing good. We're all chill. We're all happy to be in year 11. Yeah, another thumbs up. Yeah. Okay, well, I'm here to tell you that you shouldn't fear, okay? Year 11 is honestly going to be one of the best years of high school. A lot of people say it, a lot of people agree that year 11 is just such a good year. You know, year 11 is a great chance for you guys to work out what works for you. So, you know, just keep in mind that everything you do in year 11 doesn't count towards your HSC, right? All the marks and stuff don't really count. It's more of a great opportunity for you to test different study habits, you know, figure out your strengths and weaknesses, figure out what you're passionate about. And essentially it provides you with a window into your final year of high school. So again, once we go in more depth about the rubrics and the modules, you will see that there is very big similarities and resonances between year 11 and 12. So this is just like a practice round. So treat it as a practice, have fun, you know, and just figure out what works for you. Okay, so this is essentially your trial and error year. So enjoy it while it lasts, because trust me, year 12 is not going to get any better. But with that being said, let's go into the rubrics. Okay, so rubrics, I say that in the junior years, you might not have been stressed too much about them. You might not have been introduced to them very in depth. But towards your senior years, you're going to need a really big understanding of the rubrics and essentially know them back to front, okay? But since I know a lot of you might not be familiar with what a rubric is, let's just go in depth in terms of what it actually is. So a rubric is basically your guide to the module you are studying in the term. So every term throughout senior years, you'll most likely be focusing on a specific module for English, okay? So right now, you should all be doing a module called Reading to Write. Now, this module has its own rubric. A rubric is basically a large chunk of text that NESA provides us with, which gives us a really deep insight into what they expect you to learn from studying a certain module, okay? Rubrics can be found across all subjects in high school, no matter what you're doing, whether it be sciences, social sciences, arts even, like there will be rubrics for everything. However, they are very, very, very important for English, and we will get into more in depth as to why. So let's talk about reading to write. Also, just to reiterate, if you guys have any questions, don't be afraid to just send them into the chat and I can answer them during the talk. But let's go into reading to write. So right now you are all doing a common module called reading to write. So across all schools, everyone does it for term 1. And this is what it looks like on the NESA website. Now, I'm not going to read this all out to you because we only have an hour, but you can find this body of text on NESA by searching up year 11 reading to write module. So what this basically is, oh, can I get everyone to be on mute, please? I just heard a bit of feedback. But to continue, what this module basically is, or like what this piece of text is, it's like your insight into what NESA wants you to learn. So basically, if you're thinking like, what am I meant to gain out of English? Because, you know, a lot of people might have mixed feelings about English. If you're thinking about, you know, why am I learning this? What am I meant to even be learning? Go to this page, okay? Look at what NESA has written here, because this is what you need to take away from it. And this is what you need to show that you've learned in your assessment tasks. So let's talk more about reading to write. So essentially, you are reading to write. So NESA wants students to read a variety of texts with varying literary features and techniques. Okay, by reading these texts, we can identify how each author skillfully uses these features, and students aim to incorporate these elements into their own creative writing pieces. So this requires wide reading and the identification and appreciation of literary techniques and forms. Okay, so what we've done here is kind of narrowed it down to like 3 dot points out of, this whole chunk of text, okay? So the main 3 dot points you need to focus on are here. Essentially, you are reading to write. You are writing creatives based on what you've read, okay? You are inspired by the techniques that you've seen other authors use, and then you're putting them into your own, I guess, stories, okay? Your assessment tasks will probably be creative writing or some kind of way, shape, or form, something like that, and possibly with a reflection as well. Now, all this information can be found in the hard copy booklets that you've been given for today's seminar. If you didn't end up getting one, you can come back after the seminar to the center and pick one up, because I'm just going to go through things fast. So if you're missing out on anything, just refer to the booklet while we go through it. Okay, so in term 2, you're going to be doing a module called Narratives That Shape Our World. So let's unpack this one a bit more as well. So again, a big chunk of text on the NESA website, and it's essentially telling you what you need to learn during term 2, which is Narratives That Shape Our World. Again, you can search this up and find it on the NESA website. And let's break it down. We've kind of, again, shortened it to 3 dot points. So this module talks about how does one text influence another. Okay, so NESA wants students to consider the role of storytelling both in the past and present. You will be asked to consider how one text may shape and influence a modern text in terms of its ideas, values, and literary features. And then you will be asked to critically evaluate the use of narrative features between both composers and reflect it in your assessment tasks. Basically, you will be studying more than one text. It will most likely be a comparative task, and you will have to analyze how one text maybe in the past has influenced another text in the future. Okay, so you'll be exploring comparative writing, comparative essay writing. You'll be using words such as like on the other hand, similarly, like you would need to like dissect how each text resonates and is dissonant from each other. And then finally, in term 3, you're going to be going through critical study of literature. Again, big body of text, but we've summarized it for you, and you can just search this up if you want to find it. But critical study of literature best talks about your critical understanding of a text. So it's the same as like analyzing any text, but in this module, NESA wants you to take it a step further and come up with your own, I guess, critical evaluation of a text, applying your own opinions to it based off what you've learned. Okay, so NESA wants students to consider the key ideas of a text and how they're conveyed by its construction, content, and language. So a very big focus on form and literary features. Students are expected to critically evaluate and form their own opinions on prescribed texts, and students use their newfound knowledge about these ideas and textual features and explore them within their own writing. So you'll just be writing very in-depth essays, very critical and very just, large focuses on literary features and form rather than like a comparative per se or a creative writing task. Okay, so why does this matter? So what's so important about year 11 that gets students to think, okay, I need to start trying hard? Well, basically, year 12 is almost exactly the same in terms of module structure and content. So let's go through that together. So year 12 rubrics, common module, which is what you start in year 11 term 4, is called Texts and Human Experiences. Now I put a little asterisk here because this is slightly different to year 11, but the following modules are all the exact same. So module A, which is what you study in year 12 term 1, so your official year 12 year, it's called module A, Textual Conversations, where students conduct a comparative study of texts and explore how one text construction influences another. Does this sound familiar to any other module from year 11? Let's keep going. We've got module B, a critical study of literature, which is students conduct an in-depth study of their prescribed text and consider its form, textual features, and key ideas. And then you've got module C, which is your final term of year 12. Students read a wide variety of texts and identify literary techniques that are incorporated with their own creators, discursives, and or persuasives. Okay, so I'm hoping right now you can see that there are very, very big similarities between the modules. But how this is seen, so in paper 1, you will have short responses and common module essay. So this is, again, common module is not too relevant in terms of year 11, but it's just still good to like develop these skills. So paper 1 is on day 1 of your HSC. Paper 2 is on day 2. So on day 2, you will have a module A comparative essay, a module B critical essay, and a module C creative, discursive, or persuasive. And then you will have 2 hours, so 40 minutes each, roughly, for each piece of writing. But look at this summary here, right? So for year 11 common module, we'll see that reading to write, which is essentially, you know, reading and identifying literary features and techniques and putting them into your own creative writing, is almost the exact same as module C's, the craft of writing, okay? Module A here, narratives that shape our world, you'll be doing a comparative essay task or a comparative multimodal even. However, this translates into module A year 12, which is textual conversations, which is also a comparative study between 2 texts. Module B in year 11, critical study of literature, it's almost the exact same as year 12, critical study of literature. It's literally called the same thing. So what I want to reiterate here to you guys is that what you get in year 11 is going to be a very, very good window into year 12, right? You will see that the structure of your assessment tasks and the nature of them will be almost the exact same, right? So if you guys are pumping out great essays in year 11, you essentially can carry on what you've learned from them into year 12 and giving yourself more confidence in terms of how to approach year 12 assessment tasks. That is also why I want to reiterate that year 11, again, is the trial and error year, right? You find out what works for you, you apply it to those assessment tasks, see how you go in them. And then if you find that you're lacking in a certain module, then you will know that when year 12 comes around and that same, I guess, similar module comes back up again, you will need to know how to prepare for it better. And you will need to know what works for you and what doesn't. Okay, so let's say you get a year 11 assessment task on module A, narratives that shape our world, which is a comparative study, right? And you find that in your essay, you feel like you got a mark that you feel like wasn't that great because you didn't compare the 2 texts well enough, okay? Then you know in year 12, when you study module A again, which is textual conversations, that same assessment task style that pops up again, you will know how to improve upon it, and you will know, what you need to do to get a successful A range mark. I hope this all makes sense so far in terms of why year 11 is just such a good window into year 12. But that's essentially what I wanted to discuss with you guys about the rubric. Now I want to talk to you all about essay writing. So I feel like essay writing is such a up in the air topic in terms of school and how they teach it. I feel like schools tend to gravitate towards more, dissecting a book, learning its context, learning, so much about characters and such like that. But then they fail to kind of recognize the importance of teaching us essay writing and how to write good essays and, what should be in a good essay, right? So here at OpenWisdom, I just wanted to, kind of give you a brief talk into what elements you need to think about including into your essays, especially at a senior level, okay? Because whilst writing can be subjective, there is a formula to success when it comes to the HSC, because the HSC markers are looking for specific elements in your essays, which we will unpack now. So as a introduction again, we're going to be talking about introductions, body paragraphs, conclusions, and then common mistakes that a lot of students tend to do. So let's jump straight into it. Introductions. So there's no set way to write an effective introduction, as everyone has a unique writing style that works for them. However, there are several elements that should be present within every introduction written for an essay. These elements include answering the question, introducing your text, rubric words and statements, context, and lastly, but most importantly, your thesis, okay? So I want to make sure that you guys know that, this isn't the order that you have to put everything in. Treat this as like a checklist and making sure that you go back once you've written an introduction and think to yourself, have I included all of these elements? But let's begin talking about them. So answering the question, this should be consistent throughout your whole introduction. You must make sure you are referring back to the question to make sure you are directly answering it, okay? If you do not refer to the question, if you don't answer the question, you automatically limit your essay to a B range mark straight off the bat. Okay, so it's really, really important that you identify what the keywords of the question are and consistently evaluate and refer to them throughout your whole introduction and the rest of your essay as well. Rubric words. So going back to what we just talked about in terms of rubrics, you will see the importance of rubrics as keywords from each rubric will need to be within your essay as well. You will need to provide rubric statements and rubric words to show that you have understood what you were meant to learn in that term and to show it off in whatever assessment task you have, such as an essay, right? So each essay you write is specific to a module and its rubric. Your essay shouldn't be generic enough that it can fit into different rubrics, because then I'm like, well, the essay markers would be thinking, you know, did they learn anything for this rubric, right? So it's important that you kind of show that you've learned, I guess, what you meant to learn in that term by implementing keywords from the rubric and sentences and discussing its ideas further in relation to what text you're studying. So think about how your text relates to the rubric. Then we go on to context. So context refers to the background of your text. It influences the composer in terms of their purpose in writing this text and how it influences the overall key ideas, okay? So treat context as, you know, what was happening in real life around the composer and how that pushed them to write this text, okay? Because you will see that different texts are specific to a certain context, okay? And it's important that you include at least one sentence of context in your introduction. And lastly, but most importantly, your thesis. So your thesis is arguably the most important aspect of your introduction, as it's basically a couple answers that reveals your answer to the question and your interpretation of, you know, what you're going to talk about through the rest of your essay. So your thesis might be a great opportunity to introduce your themes, you know, your overall evaluation of the question and how it might link to the audience, right? What it teaches us as modern audiences. And this essentially allows you to show that you have a critical understanding of the text and it's not just copy and pasted from something else. It's like you provide your own opinion to the question. So I've got here a little sample introduction based on module A of year 12, which is a comparative module, again, textual conversations between King Richard III and Looking for Richard. Now, on its own, you know, it's really hard to, I guess, unpack it because I'm not sure if everyone here has studied these two texts. However, on the next slide, I have highlighted each element of what we've just talked about. And this is what I kind of want to focus on more instead, right? I'm showing you this because I want to make sure that you all realize that by hitting all of these elements, everything you've written in your introduction is meaningful, okay? It serves a purpose and it's not just there to fill up space and fill up word count, okay? So my first sentence, I straight away answer / describe the question. So my question here, sorry, is any text is the absorption and transformation of another, right? In my first sentence, I just talk about the question. I talk about how, you know, one text can absorb ideas from another, however, transforms them based on context, okay? Now, this will probably make more sense once you actually study these modules, but again, I just want to show you that in this element here, or this first sentence here, I've already addressed the question. My next sentence, sorry, I've introduced my two texts, okay? And then related it back to the question and the rubric. In the yellow, you see context, okay? So again, context is really important in terms of discussing how a text has been influenced by what was happening in the real world and what caused a composer to, I guess, create this text, because composers usually create texts to teach us something. And I guess you can think about it as they're trying to teach us something based on what was happening in the real world. They're trying to convince their audience to think a certain way or to see the world in a certain way. In the purple / pink below, it's just my thesis statement. Okay, so my thesis statement evaluates everything that I've talked about and puts it into a couple, like just one sentence to finally show what I'm going to talk about throughout the rest of my essay. Okay, so in your hard copy booklets, you will have this available to you. However, it is not highlighted. So what I'm going to do right now is give you guys maybe a couple minutes to maybe color code, highlight your introductions that we've provided with you based off what I've got on the screen here. And let's say it's 11:26 now. I'll give you guys till about 11:30 to do that. In the meantime, if you have any questions right now, feel free to write in the chat and ask away. But yeah, I'll just give you guys a few minutes to highlight your introductions so you make sure that you understand that every sentence should serve a purpose. All right, so get to it. And if you're done early, just do a thumbs up react. So I know if the majority of the people are done, we can just move on. All right, thanks, Raymond. I see that you're done. Give everyone else a few more minutes before I move on. Thanks, Olivia. See your thumbs up as well. So yeah, I just want to reiterate that whilst I might not be able to teach you how to write an introduction in an hour based off whatever text you guys are studying, just think back to this talk with what we've talked about in terms of the elements and apply it to your own, text that you're studying. When you're writing your essays, go back to your hard copy booklets and look at those elements and think, okay, have I included this element? Do I need to add any more to it? Okay, go through your own introduction and highlight each sentence to make sure that it fits into a certain element, right? That way you know that everything you're writing has a purpose and it's meaningful. Okay, that's a really great strategy for you guys to learn, I guess, what needs to be included in an introduction. And it also teaches you to evaluate your own writing. And that way, if you feel like you've made a mistake, you can learn from it and build upon your previously written. Because I'm sure if you guys all even went back and looked at your year 7 pieces of writing, right now, now that you understood there's certain elements that you need to hit in an introduction, if you go back to everything you've written in year 7 and 8, you're going to read your introductions and think, wow, I'm missing maybe a lot. Or maybe you were a genius at year 7 or 8. But I know if I went back and read all my year 7 and 8 pieces of writing, I just think to myself, wow, I probably hit none of these elements, meaning I will not get a good mark. So it's really important that you think to yourself, have I hit these things? And this is a good checklist for you to think, for you to refer back to. Okay, another point I want to talk about introductions before we move on to body paragraphs is, and this is like a little insider tip for you guys. So I guess at school, you'll meet teachers that have marked the HSC before and that have been HSC markers. So some of my teachers back in high school were also HSC markers, and they have told me that, introductions are such a critical part to your essay, okay? Because they set the tone of your essay. If you think about HSC markers, they're marking thousands of essays okay, across New South Wales, right? Everyone does like 4 different essays per exam. So it's just like a lot for them to mark, right? And imagine just sitting there marking, like you're going to get sick of it eventually. So as fair or unfair as this is, a lot of markers are just going to read your introductions, right? And already have a mindset of what they want to give your essay as a grade, okay? Because your introduction already kind of tells a marker whether, you know, your essay is going to be successful. If you have a successful introduction, they're more inclined to think throughout your whole essay, yeah, this is a good one. If your essay starts off bad, then the marker's just going to think to themselves like, you know, I'm not convinced that this will get any better, right? So introduction, super, super, super important. Okay, so I feel like I've given enough time for everyone to kind of highlight. I hope I have. If not, I can go back to these slides towards the end of the session, and give you more time then. But let's just move on for now and talk about body paragraphs. Okay, so like introductions, there is no set way for writing a body paragraph. Instead, it is important again that we think about the elements that we need to include and to make sure that we have included them. Okay, typically in a HSC essay, you will have 3 body paragraphs, but that might change based on the module you are doing. So again, make sure you have a good understanding of the module and how to write essays for each module, okay? But typically 3 body paragraphs. So to ensure that you have a band 6 body paragraph, you will need topic sentences, contextual statements, links to the rubric, and I'm also going to add links to the question as well there, and evidence and analysis, okay? So let's go through body paragraphs. So topic sentences. A topic sentence sets the scene for your body paragraph. It should introduce the theme / key idea you are addressing and answer and link back to the question. So straight away, first sentence, introduce what you're going to talk about in your body paragraph, okay, and link it back to the question. Link it back to how it relates to the rubric even. Again, rubric words, and this is why we went through rubrics earlier, because I want you to see that rubrics need to be within your essay as well, okay? Again, each essay you write is specific to a module and its rubric. Your essay should not only address the question, but address the rubric itself. If you're talking about narratives that shape our world, then your rubric needs to address ideas specific to narratives that shape our world, okay? This will be different to critical study, because if critical study, you're just talking about form and such, you're not essentially focusing on how a narrative might have shaped your opinion or the world's opinion, okay? So do this again by implementing keywords from the rubric and statements and sentences discussing its key ideas. Contextual statements. So like your introduction, your body paragraph should also include context. Remember, context drives purpose when it comes to exploring the ideas of your prescribed text. And when you're unpacking these key ideas, you'll see that, you know, there is a sole reason as to why they have been explored, okay? Different themes are specific to different texts. You're not going to see the same theme in every text, okay? So then you can think to yourself, okay, why has this theme been explored? Yeah, and then how does it relate to context? Last, evidence and analysis as well. You need to include quotes to support your ideas you explore in your body paragraphs. Without evidence, your arguments become useless, okay? Treat your topic sentence as your argument and then your quotes as the evidence to support it, okay? I like to say that, you know, if you're going to use a quote, make sure there's a technique associated with it, because you're going to have to analyze them well, okay? You will also need to analyze them using sophisticated language. So I'm pretty sure in your hard copy booklets, there's a bit of advice saying don't introduce quotes like, you know, within this quote or in this quote, right? Try and embed the quotes into your sentences, right? Make it flow. That way you show a good control of language and you show that you have a sophisticated level of English, right? Avoid using words such as quotes, themes, shows, right? These will elevate, this will kind of show your marker that you don't have a good control over language, right? If you embed everything within your essay, it will show an elevated level of understanding. But let's also break it down in terms of how do I actually analyze a quote. Okay, so introduce your quote within your sentence, which is what I was just talking about now. Don't say like within this quote, okay? Make sure you provide an actual technique to the quote. State its effects by connecting it to your theme. So it's not enough to just say, you know, this quote uses a metaphor. I'm like, okay, what does that tell me, right? What does this metaphor actually do, right? How does it connect to your theme that you're discussing, okay? Let's say you're discussing about love, okay? What does this metaphor talk about in terms of love, right? You need to take that extra step. And then lastly, link it back to the question, okay? Just like your introductions where you need to link to the question, your body paragraphs also need to be linking to the question, okay? You need to make sure that you're linking to the question throughout, because that shows that you're answering your question, which gets you a band 6 mark. If you don't answer your question, you don't get a band 6 mark, unfortunately. All right, let's keep going. Again, I've done the exact same thing here with a body paragraph. You guys will have the same body paragraph in your hard copy booklets. I suggest now annotating it while I go through it. So the first sentence, again, straight away, a topic sentence, okay? And it introduces my key ideas / theme that I will be talking about throughout my whole body paragraph. In the blue, we see context. Again, I've included a lot of context because, especially specifically to this module, it's very important, but context drives purpose, and you need to talk about the purpose of these texts, right? So you need context to support that. In the green, we have quote analysis. Yeah. So I've got roughly 3 to 4 quotes within this body paragraph. This is this was analyzing a film as well. So some parts it was just talking about scenes. So there might have not been direct quotes. And then finally, more yellow, meaning linking as well. So I've been linking back to the question, and the pink is rubric links. So the pink is where I've kind of talked about rubric ideas rather than just specifically question ideas. Okay, so again, I just want you guys to realize that everything in my body paragraph serves a purpose. There is no wasted space, wasted words, nothing like that, right? We don't want that. We want to make sure that everything that we have written serves a meaningful purpose to your essay. So again, I'll give you guys a couple minutes just to highlight and make sure you've got everything down, and that way we can move on. And then if you guys need more time, just let me know, and then I can go back and give you guys more time. But again, if you guys have any questions so far, feel free to send them in the chat, because, you know, as much as Zoom is great, it does feel a bit weird with me just like talking to a bunch of random people with no faces, unfortunately. So yeah, if you guys have any questions, don't be afraid to ask. I'm more than happy to answer. But yeah, I'll give you guys a few minutes, maybe let's say till 11:40, just to finish all of that. And if you do miss out on, I guess, annotating everything, then maybe you can challenge yourselves by thinking, okay, is this a rubric link, or is this context, and highlight it for yourself. And that way you can identify from this example what each line is. Again, once you're done, just give up a thumbs up so I know when to move on. Right, I'm going to move on in 1 minute. if you haven't gotten it down, maybe take a screenshot. All right, let's keep going now. Now we've got a quote analysis breakdown. Okay, so I want to like give you guys a bit more in depth into what I mean by, let's say, embedding a quote into your sentence. So here I've got, as he states with imperative tone, which is my technique, and then I go straight into the quote. I am determined to prove a villain. Shakespeare positions responders to view Richard as villainous, realizing his deceptive nature in which Richard interacts with the world. Okay, so again, this is based off the text King Richard III. Now notice how here I haven't said something such as, within this quote, I am determined to prove a villain, or Shakespeare uses the quote, I am determined to prove a villain, right? I've embedded the quote into my actual sentence. This shows a much more stronger control of language, okay? For example, here, the hyperbole of Richard's deformities, deformed, unfinished, sent before my time, right? Again, it's just embedded into my sentence. It doesn't feel like jarring and separated in terms of, okay, guys, I'm about to introduce a quote, yeah? In the blue, we have an effect statement, okay? I've gone beyond just saying that it's imperative tone or hyperbole, and I've actually analyzed, what these techniques do, okay? What do they do in terms of, what do they show the audience? Yeah, and this would usually relate back to, the text and its key idea that you're exploring in your body paragraph. And then lastly, in the green, I've got a final link back to the question, okay? Because I need to make sure that I'm consistently linking to the question throughout my whole essay. So yellow techniques, blue effect statement, and green link to the question. Again, everything serves a purpose, and that is how you would effectively analyze quotes. So in your next upcoming assessment tasks, I know, again, you're doing a creative, but even in your reflections, if you have to write one, okay, when you introduce quotes, I want to challenge you guys to make sure that you embed your quotes within your sentences, yeah, and make sure you have a technique for each of them. All right, I'm not gonna wait too long, so a few minutes and then we'll move on, because I think there's a lot less to highlight in this section. Okay, 1 minute, and then I'll move on at around 11:45. All right, let's move on. Okay, lastly, we've got our conclusion. So this is going to be like a very quick re-summarization of what you've explored throughout your whole essay. Okay, you just recap your key themes and ideas, right? It is also wise to provide a final statement that readdresses the question and determines how audiences learn something new from a text, okay? So you might say something like, therefore, Shakespeare's Othello warns audiences of the racism that continues to pervade the modern world, okay? You might not say something word for word like that, because I want you guys to improve upon that, but just off the top of my head, right? Provide a little statement that, reaches out to a wider audience, okay? And tells you guys, like tells everyone the importance of what you've just studied and what you've explored throughout your whole essay, okay? But a conclusion doesn't have to be too long. These are the main elements that you just need to do, which is recap your key themes, ideas, readdress the question and your thesis, and then maybe provide a final statement in terms of how it impacts a wider audience. Okay, so for the final part of this session, I just want to talk about do's and don'ts, okay? So a lot of students make the same errors throughout their HSC career and their senior years. So I'm just going to unpack them, okay? So firstly, in your don'ts, you see, don't retell the story in your essay, okay? A lot of students think that retelling the story is the same as analyzing a story, right? And I will tell you now that it's not the same, okay? Treat the reader as if they know what happens in the story, okay? You don't need to provide me with a whole plot summary to analyze one quote. Instead, you should be providing me with a technique, an effect statement, which is how does the technique show the audience something in terms of your key idea, and then link it back to the question. Don't say, like, this metaphor shows, and then provide me with the whole plot, because that's not effective analysis. Don't reuse the same essay for every question, okay? So within your HSC, you're going to be writing essays on the spot. And this is a very, very hard task, okay? What you should do to avoid, so the error with reusing the same essay is that you're not going to be answering the question, okay? A lot of students fall into the trap of, okay, I've memorized a 20 out of 20 essay and I'm going to go into my HSC with it. But it won't be a 20 out of 20 if you're not answering the different question that you've been provided with on the day. So what you should be doing is learning good parts of your essays, right? Memorizing big chunks, I'm not against, because it is important that you're prepared to write during the HSC. You don't want to just blank out, but you need to learn to adapt your essays to different questions, okay? When you think back to your pre-prepared essays and the ones you've done that have succeeded, right? Keep the good parts and then change the parts you need on the day to address the question, okay? The elements in your essays that mainly address the questions would be your thesis statement, your linking statement for your quotes, and your topic sentences, right? So learn to adapt those three elements to different questions, okay? Maybe pre-prepare a whole essay and learn it. And then for practice, for an exam that's upcoming, right? Challenge yourself by giving yourself different styles of questions and learning to adapt your essays to those questions. So that might be tweaking the words in your topic sentences, you know, adding more to your linking statement so it links further to the question. But like I've said to you guys, if you don't link to the question and if you don't answer the question, you're not going to get an A range essay. So it's really, really important that you learn to adapt. Lastly, don't blindly answer a question, okay? Don't just jump in and start writing, okay? I know time-wise, it's very important that you finish. So it is important that you start as soon as you can and write as fast as you can, but learn to mentally break down the question and connect its ideas to your essay practice, okay? So this kind of relates to adapting, right? With a rubric, every kind of thing you learn is connected because the whole rubric is connected, right? You will see different buzzwords and keywords that are all linked to each other, right? If you have a good understanding of the rubric, then technically you will be able to overcome any question you get because every rubric word links to another. So let's say you've prepared an essay that, you know, addresses more towards a certain idea in a rubric, but the question you get on the day is a separate idea from the same rubric. Those two ideas should be linked, okay? Because it's from the same rubric. That way, your essay should be able to link to your new question as well, if that makes sense, okay? So it's really important that you learn to mentally break down the question, identify the keywords of that question, because we need to see that throughout your essays, and then connect its ideas to your essay practice. So again, I'd say these three don'ts are very, very common throughout the senior years, or just like throughout students in general. So to set yourselves apart, don't do these don'ts, okay? Does that make sense? Just, yeah, avoid these common mistakes because a lot of students fall for this trap, okay? All right, so does anyone have a question? Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up a mentee. So a mentee is like this little place where you can submit questions. Oh, actually, I'm going to come back to that. I know we have a lot of new faces here, so I'm just going to briefly run you through what we are about at OpenWisdom, and then we'll come back to the questions. So here at OpenWisdom, we really want you to achieve your goals. Okay, so we provide a very much personalized learning style, right? Where we really focus on one-on-ones, one-on-twos, rather than a big classroom setting. Because with English, it's really important that we are focusing on what you need and what you need to improve upon. Okay, so you receive a personalized study plan from your tutors, teaching that's adapted to you, and a supportive network that also cares about you. Okay, you can always reach out to us and we're always available because we pride ourselves on the relationships and, you know, the friendships that we make here at OpenWisdom. Okay, so we offer these subjects, so English, sciences, and maths, and others as well, so business studies, economics, and languages for Japanese. If you'd like to take a screenshot of this, I recommend you do so. And then we offer free trial lessons. So if you want to just try out our center, you know, there's no commitment to it. Just come in for a free trial lesson, 1 hour with our tutors. You should definitely try to give it a go and sign up now. We are currently through enrollment as well. So I definitely recommend that to secure your free lesson. And then this is how you can contact us for a free lesson. So again, I'll give you guys a couple seconds to screenshot this, and I'll come back to this towards the end, but then I'm going to open up our mentee as well. So you guys can submit any questions anonymously if you have. So if you guys are scared to like put in the chat and like reveal you asking a question, that's completely fine. I understand it's a bit scary. So I'll open up the mentee and make it all anonymous. So let me just do that now. So, okay, you can join with this code 61430967, right? So if you just search up mentee.com and then ask any questions. So I'll leave this up for about a couple minutes if anyone wants to ask anything. I just want to reiterate, no question is a silly question, okay? Because a lot of people might have the same question. So really just ask anything you want, whether it's English related, senior year related, high school related, anything, and I will answer them. So it's like our Q&A. But if I feel like no one has any questions, then we might start to wrap things up. And also don't be afraid to ask if you want me to go over any points that I've talked about today in our seminar as well. I'm more than happy to revisit, but just make sure that you remember there's also the handbook from today's seminar, which has all the information that I've gone through as well. Okay, it looks like no one really has any questions, which is totally fine. What I might do, I'll leave this up for a bit longer. However, we can also start to wrap things up, and then I'll come back to the mentee if anyone has any questions. So again, this is how you can contact us for a free trial lesson just to try, because I know a lot of students here might not go here yet. So definitely come visit the OpenWisdom family and see what we're all about. Otherwise, if no one has any questions, thank you all for listening to today's seminar. I really appreciate you guys coming, and I really hope that you've taken away something from today, whether it be about essay writing or the importance of year 11, or, you know, learning to enjoy it, right? Remember, year 11 is probably going to be one of the best years of your high school experience. It's still fun. Nothing counts yet. It's just a good way for you guys to figure out what works for you. Okay, so if you guys don't have questions, then you're more than welcome to finish up and leave. Thank you so much for coming, and I hope to see you around at OpenWisdom. Okay, I'm just going to go back to here and leave this up if anyone needs it. And I'll check the mentee as well, actually, to see. Yeah, no question. That's completely fine. I'm going to leave this up for a bit more, but you guys are more than welcome to head off if you guys need to be anywhere else. Thanks again for coming, and I hope to see you all around. No worries. Thanks, Raymond. I hope you have a great day.